Welcome to The Healthy Advisor, a podcast from WealthManagement.com focused on advisors' personal well-being and healing. I'm Diana Britton, managing editor of WealthManagement.com, and in this podcast we explore some of the struggles and personal development issues facing advisors and financial services professionals, and how to get to a place of healing for mind, body, and spirit. Hello, and welcome to the latest episode of the Healthy Advisor podcast, and thanks for joining us. As you may know, this is the podcast focused on financial advisor health and well-being, and today's guest has a lot of lessons to teach us on this topic. Her name is Kristine McManus. She's the Chief Advisor Growth Officer at Commonwealth Financial Network in Waltham, Massachusetts. Kristine, thank you so much for being on the podcast.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, so earlier this year, Kristine spoke at Commonwealth's Women's Summit and led a workshop inspired by Bozoma St. John's book, The Urgent Life. And, after she led a workshop, Living Life Urgently, talking to the firm's female advisors about exactly that. But, Kristine spoke about her own experience last year battling breast cancer and just some of the lessons learned from that, and, how to, live life urgently and live, live in the now. And so Kristine's going to talk to us a little bit about that. And I think, so Kristine, I think you said you were diagnosed at the end of 2022 with
That's
breast
correct.
cancer. Well, take us back and tell us about it, and how did you find out?
So most of what I feel people could ever learn from me is don't do what I did, right? You learn from my mistakes. In general, that's more than all the things that I did right. But I will say I was always really careful and really meticulous about getting regular mammograms. And so shameless pitch to all of you, make sure you do get regular mammograms, because in this case, they were able to catch something very, very small. I didn't feel anything. I wouldn't have had symptoms for years. And it definitely makes a difference in the outcome. It was in August of 2022. And I'd actually had a couple of mammograms where they thought something was up and it wasn't, but I'd have a biopsy and they put a little marker in. They actually put a little chip in, so they know they've checked a place. And I went in and they said, something doesn't look right here. But I wasn't concerned because that had happened a few times and it was never anything. And then they wanted more images. And then they wanted me to wait for the radiologist. And then the radiologist wanted an ultrasound. And then they wanted a biopsy. And so, that was the surprise, that it was, in fact, that time it was breast cancer.
And at first they thought it was the least aggressive form, right?
Yeah. And, they diagnosed it and they said, but really not to worry. If you're going to get a breast cancer, this is the one you want. It was something called in situ, which means it was just in the duct, which means it was very small. And again, cancer is cancer, but this was the least invasive cancer. And it was going to be a very simple procedure to remove it. And so I let my boss know, but I didn't tell anyone else. There was going to be no chemo, no radiation, kind of no muss, no fuss. I would get this out and I would have a little radiation, but you don't lose your hair. There'd be no big whoop is how I looked at it. And that's what I planned on. So not good news, but certainly not the worst news.
Yeah.
And that's what we planned on. And I went in November and had this surgery. And then we waited, and we knew we had to wait for the results of the pathology. But radiation was going to start in January. So I wasn't waiting for it. I wasn't looking for it. We decided we'd do it after the holidays. And that was it. And then it was right after Thanksgiving. And then suddenly I came out of a meeting and I had 22 messages from hospitals confirming my surgery for Monday, from my doctor, from my surgeon, from my oncologist, like a million.
Mm.
And I didn't even know what was going on. But the pathology came back and it was a 180 from what they thought it was. So because of the Thanksgiving holiday and other factors, the pathology had been delayed, but it was in fact not in situ, the easy cancer. It was triple negative, which is sort of the worst hand you can be dealt because it's fast growing and it's invasive and it doesn't respond to a lot of other treatments. So not a good day.
Yeah. Yeah, just a little bit of background. Triple negative breast cancer accounts for about 10 to 15% of all breast cancers. And the term triple negative breast cancer refers to the fact that the cancer cells don't have estrogen or progesterone. I don't know if I
Yep.
don't know. I'm not saying that right. Receptors
Yep.
and also don't make any or
HER2.
too much of the protein called HER2.
Yep. HER2, they call it.
These cancers tend to be more common in women younger than age 40. But I mean, tell us about what 2023 looked like for you as you underwent treatment.
It's everybody reacts to cancer differently. And so I will tell you, I'm not at all angry or bitter that I got breast cancer or this diagnosis or any of that. I'm very angry about the timing of it
Mm,
because my children were seniors in high school. And that,
mm,
like, there's not a more important year in their lives and their decisions. And, the fall sports season, I had two surgeries. We had a lot going on. And then I started chemo in January. And so, it was going to be the strongest dose of chemo available. And so I will say I'm angry because I missed so much of their year. And I was trying to pretend that I felt okay because I didn't want my kids, I have twins. I didn't want them to see me sick or upset.
yeah.
So, lots of pretending that, no, things are fine. Things are fine. I'm just gonna rest in bed, I think, tonight. And,
Mm,
um, so anyway, that's what I still struggle with. I finished chemo and radiation, and 4 days later, my daughter left for college. So, it's the timing of it for me. And it's brutal. So triple negative is a really harsh treatment. I will tell any of you that when they say, that you might lose your hair, yeah, no, you're pretty much going to lose your hair. So you should not kid yourself, right? Just be prepared for it. So I had my daughter prepare me for it. I gave her a pair of scissors and said, go to town. Go give me
mm,
a new haircut leading up to it. And I'd had, pretty long hair. And she went to town, and the pictures of my haircut, we were laughing ourselves silly, but it really didn't matter. And, a week later, it all came out anyway. So we tried to look for those sorts of moments of grace where you could at least laugh about it.
mm. Yeah. And, any, sort of life lessons that came out of the experience?
Well, so it's probably not different than we all experience that you find you have friends in the most unlikely places, right? The people who sent cards or flowers or reached out, and you wouldn't have expected it, right? Just how very kind most people are. And then there were also some friends who disappeared, and maybe because they didn't know what to say or they didn't know what to do. But I would say don't disappear, right? That might be the worst thing that you can do. So I learned a lot, right? I took a lot for granted, like we all do. Especially the time. So I think you can tell I'm bitter that it happened that senior year. my kids played lacrosse. There were always, captain's banquets and different things that, the parents of the kids usually were very heavily involved in. And I really couldn't do that. So, um, and to, not to waste the moments. I think we all know someone who thought they'd have more time, whether it was with a loved one or, with a hobby like running, and then they blow a knee out, or then
Mm,
someone dies, right? My sister-in-law lost her husband a month ago, and she's reeling. And one of the things that she said to me several times is, I thought I'd have more time,
mm.
right? So I think that's probably true for most people.
Yeah, and I know, you were telling me about how you went on a trip last year, just to sort of like do the things that you want to do, even though you were going through treatment and everything. And tell me about that. What inspired you to do that?
So I'm just incredibly lucky. I had two friends, and so we had planned, we had all had children graduating. And so the summer before I got my diagnosis, we had said, you know what? Let's go to Italy as a graduation gift for the kids. Let's all go, three families. Let's make this the trip of a lifetime. And so then my diagnosis came, but because in the beginning, it was supposed to be this very simple cancer, we continued planning. And
Mm,
so we found this incredible villa in Tuscany, unbelievably beautiful. And so we're moving forward, and then it all changed. And I tried to back out of it. I said, okay, clearly this isn't my year. I'm not going. This doesn't make sense. And Suzanne Bean and Mary Ellen LaRose said, yeah, no, you're going. We're going to make sure you go, even if we are propping you up on the airplane, you're going to go. And every few weeks I would tell them, I'm not doing this. And bless them, they did the planning, right? They figured out what we would need to do to get the private tour at the Uffizi Museum, and they figured out sort of some of the logistics of the car rentals and those sorts of things. And they didn't carry me there physically, but they carried the weight of the trip. And every time, I mean, I was very sick. And if you looked at me, unfortunately, I looked very sick, right? You lose your
mm,
eyebrows, I looked very sick. And I kept saying, I am not doing this. And they kept saying, but you are, right? We're all going, and we're not going without you. And I had it too, as it turned out, just sort of not dumb luck, but just the timing. I had a 3-week window from when I finished chemo to before I started radiation. And that was when we went to Italy, and it was the highlight of the year. It was a trip of a lifetime. My kids loved it. Everybody loved it. It was fabulous. And I'm so grateful that they didn't take my no, right? That they didn't let me back out, because it gave me something positive to look forward to, right? All the months. And they would drop off little maps of Florence, and they would drop off cannolis to see if I'd
mm.
feel like eating. They would drop off a cappuccino, and they were doing all of these wonderful things to get me excited about going. And I did. I spent a lot of hours with the beautiful books on Italy and Tuscany, and I'm grateful they made me go, right?
Yeah, it sounds like an amazing trip. And
I
I
have an
think that
amazing villa in Tuscany. If you ever want to go, I
I
will
just
give
might
you
take
the
you up
link.
on that. Yeah. So, I mean, I think that that's also a significant lesson for financial advisors too, who are working with their clients and, wondering if they should take that trip or spend the money on that.
Yeah,
And, I think even for people that aren't sick, that's a great lesson there. I know,
absolutely.
yeah, and I know you recently, you spoke at the Commonwealth's Women's Summit. Tell us a little bit about what you spoke about there.
So we'd had a wonderful speaker, Bozoma St. John, and she talked about this idea of living life urgently. And so she is, she's had a storied career in marketing at PepsiCo and as the chief marketing officer at Netflix, and extremely capable. And her mother died and her husband died within the space of a month.
Gosh.
And this idea of, well, what do you wish you had done, right? What do you wish you would do differently? There's a Tim McGraw song, "Live Like You Were Dying," right?
Mm-hmm.
What would you do? And it's a beautiful song, and some of the lyrics were, I became the friend a friend would want to have, right? I found time for my dad. I went fishing with him. It's just some of these sorts of things. And so when I talked to the group, it was a follow-up to the keynote presentation. But it was also a little bit of not only should you live in the moment, but your worth. You're worth treating yourself. You're worth something. I think there used to be an old L'Oreal commercial, right? You're worth it.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's important for women especially to understand that why save anything for best? And so that's what I talked to the group about. And Diana, I don't know, I'd love to tell you a story, a true story about my aunt, right? And I shared this with the group. So I had an Aunt Mary who was actually a woman foreman in a steel factory at a time when women, weren't even in the workforce, let alone in any sort of position of authority. But I never knew that. Every time I saw my aunt, she looked like a bag lady. I mean,
Mm.
she would have sweaters with huge holes in the elbows, and not pants that were ripped, but not fashionable like jeans are ripped nowadays, like horrible. Her purse would have safety pins keeping the strap on. And I would see her and I would always feel so bad. And when I got old enough, I saved some of my babysitting money and I bought her a purse. And I remember vividly, it was an Etienne Anier. I don't know if it's an obsolete brand, but that's what I bought her. So she would have a purse and she was thrilled and happy. Oh my gosh, thank you. You shouldn't have. Oh my gosh, this is beautiful. She was very appreciative, but I would notice she never used the purse. She would still show up at family functions or gatherings or whatever it was, and with the purse that had the safety pins. And I'd say, "Auntie, where's your new purse? Why are you using that?" And she'd say, "What? Oh, honey, I'm saving that for best. I wouldn't want that to get ruined. I'm
Mm.
saving that for best." And I would buy her a sweater, and she'd show up with the ratty one, and I would say, "Where's your new sweater?" "Oh, I wouldn't wear that, to the family reunion or the family picnic. I'm saving that for best. What if it got damaged? I'm saving that for best." And I heard that a lot. And by the way, I wasn't the only one buying her things, right? Lots of family members were seeing the same things and giving her things. And it was always, "Oh, that's too fine for me to wear to church. Oh, I wouldn't wear that, just for the graduation party." And then she died. And it really is one of the saddest experiences that I've had, because I went and I was helping to clean out the house, and the closets were full with boxes of presents, and still in the box with the tissue paper and the card and the bow, right? She treasured these things and they were all untouched. So the drawers were full of beautiful sweaters and things. Closets were full, and she never used it because she was always saving it for best. Well,
Yeah,
what does that mean?
that's an incredible lesson. And you were kind of talking to me about how you did that a little bit with your daughters as well, when they were
Yeah.
younger.
Anybody that has young kids, right? When my kids were young, they would have these beautiful outfits from Janie and Jack, these just gorgeous little clothes that were very fine. And, they would wear them to for a birthday party or a holiday or something. And then I would put them back into their play clothes or their corduroys or whatever it was. And in hindsight, I don't know why I did that. Why didn't I put them in my favorite clothes every single day? Because they outgrow it in a month anyway. And
Hmm.
sure enough, right, then I had all of these beautiful little things that I just gave away, right? So I tell young moms, and I tell people in particular, no, wear it to death. Wear it to go to Dunkin' Donuts and get a car. Like, who cares? They're going to outgrow it anyway. Why save it for best? But I think it's pretty common. I mean, Diana, you tell me. I don't think it's just me, because when I talked to the group out in California, I mean, we had women in tears sharing their stories.
Yeah, I mean, I did the same thing with my daughter. She's 5 now, and she had this beautiful Christmas dress and I think she wanted to wear it to school one day, and I think I said, "No, you can't.
Mhm.
That's for special occasion. You can't wear that to school."
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the same thing.
And she
And
outgrew it, right? In a
yeah,
month?
now
Yeah.
she's outgrown it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what was some of the feedback that you got from the women at Commonwealth?
So I will say, as I was telling the story, heads were nodding.
Mm,
Some people, some women got emotional. I could see tears on faces immediately as it struck a chord, right? I think not only are we all guilty of it at some point, I think a lot of people had an Aunt Mary in their family that they remembered, right? And what I asked them to do was to think really carefully and thoughtfully at their table, talk to their peers. What is something you've been saving for best? What is something you've been putting off that one day you will do it, right? What is this joy that you're denying yourself now for one day? And why? Like, is it a valid reason, or is it just something that's in your head? And my point was, if there's things that would give you pleasure today and they're simple to do, for heaven's sake, why don't you do it? Why don't you use the china for Tuesday night taco night? Why don't you let your kids wear their fancy clothes to school, right? Why don't we do these things? And that was the challenge. And so they talked with each other, and I mean, people were pulling out handkerchiefs and Kleenexes as they were relating stories. And I walked around the room and stopped at different tables and heard the stories. And then I said, okay, who wants to share? And what is something you might do different? And people started to say, when I get home, I'm going to put the china on the table and I'm going to light the candles just because I'm home. And that moved me. And someone else said, I'm booking the cruise
mm,
that I keep thinking I'll do one day when I retire, but I don't have any plans to retire, but I'm going to book the cruise and just go. And it was a palpable energy in the room as people started to share their stories and what they would do. And everybody was getting energy from each other, because again, I just think everybody sort of realized the same thing. Why are we saving for best, right? And that's how you live in the moment, when you appreciate or you do these things to give yourself joy, right? Not every joy has to be put off or deferred. And then we said, look, here's what we'd like you to do. When you go back home or you go back to your lives, when you live in the moment, when you stop saving something for best, take a photo of it, take a video, send it to me. Let me know, right? What is it that you're doing? And we'll put it all together. And in a year, when the group meets, we'll do a slideshow, right? We'll look at what everybody did to live a much more urgent life. And I've gotten some great photos, right? Someone sent me a photo of her grandmother's silver along with a note, and it's silver and it's very ornate and it's heavy, and I keep it wrapped up and it's tarnish free cloth most of the time. And I'm pulling out my grandmother's silver and I'm going to just start using it for weeknight dinners. Like, that was a wonderful story to share. Someone else said, I'm going to send you photos of the cruise that I'm going to take when I get there. And then I did just get a picture of, it was just pasta on a beautiful china plate.
Mm. Yeah, that's great. I think it can also apply to relationships too, right? And I'm just thinking, for my own experience, a lot of times, I get woken up in the night by my kids who are sick or, they had a bad dream and I get I get frustrated because I'm, tired or whatever. And but my husband's like always saying, enjoy that, enjoy them, wanting you to crawl into bed with them in the middle of the night because, pretty soon they're going to be in college and they're not going to want that anymore. And so,
Yeah,
just sort of like enjoy those moments with your kids or your loved ones or whoever it is. Um,
absolutely. Right. Like he's right. You
yeah,
don't know when the last time is that they're sitting in your lap and they want you to read them a story. You said your daughter's 5, right? Real soon she's going to say, oh no, I can read my book. I'll read my
right.
book, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
So I enjoy it.
Yeah, exactly. Anything that you would like to say in terms of how you've personally implemented the lessons from living life urgently?
So, absolutely. So I've told you, I feel like I lost a year with my kids, an important year, and I have a lot of regret about that. But I pulled out my mother-in-law's, shamrock china for St. Patrick's Day, right?
Mm.
For 3 weeks we used the bleak china pattern just because it reminded me of my mother-in-law and also because why not? When else are you going to use shamrock china if not
On
leading
St.
up to
Patrick's Day.
say?
Yeah.
And so we use our good things. We had an incident. My daughter had some friends over and they were just goofing around, and I had a whole bunch of Waterford crystal on the counter, right? And a ball got thrown, which of course shouldn't have happened. Anyway, lost 12 Waterford glasses, right? Just
Yeah.
glass everywhere, pandemonium. And I probably a year ago, I think I probably would have gotten angry or upset or not reacted too well. And instead, my daughter was horrified and so upset. And I said, you know what? It's just crystal. And you know what? We don't really use the crystal that much. It's okay. Like you were here with your friends, you were all having fun. It was an accident. It's okay, right? That's just stuff. It's more important that you were here with your friends enjoying yourselves. And so, things don't matter as much to me, right? In terms of possessions, I guess. Does that
Yeah.
make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess I just love your attitude, your outlook on life, especially given what you've been through the last, year and a half. Well, I'm afraid we're just about out of time. Christine, I'd love to talk to you all day about this stuff.
Heavens
Um,
no.
but I'd like to thank my guest, Kristine McManus, for being on the podcast and sharing her story. Christine, thank you so much again.
Thank you, Diana, for having me. And I think you're right, Diana. Like for our financial advisors, the idea that they can help their clients live in the moment and live urgently and do the things that they hope and dream to do, to me, that really is a great thing for our financial advisors to be able to bring to their clients. So thank you for having me on.
Yeah, I think it's some great lessons for advisors and clients alike. I think it's really great what you're doing. If you'd like to reach out to Christine, if you have any questions for her, just comments, you can reach her at kmcmanus@commonwealth.com. And we'll put that in the show notes as well, so you have her contact information. If you yourself have a struggle and you wish to share your experiences and help others in similar situations, please feel free to reach out to me at diana.britton@informa.com. I'd like to thank you for listening to the Healthy Advisor. If you've not subscribed to the podcast yet, please click the subscribe now button below. This is Diana Britton reminding you that where there's healing, there is hope. We'll see you next time. Thank you for listening to The Healthy Advisor, a podcast focused on advisors' personal well-being and healing. Click the subscribe button below to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guest and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of WealthManagement.com. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional advice. Always seek the advice of your healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding your particular situation.